Welcome back to What the Decks, where over the course of a lunch hour, we take the idea for a deck build from Lunchbox to Deckbox. I'm your host, Skylar, and today we're tackling Morgok's Krushas plus Rimelocked Relics, which I'm super enthusiastic about. For those who've been following the channel, you're probably very aware of the fact that I love Rimelocked Relics, and this is something that I had previously built up and never got to field, and it's been enough time since I built it up. I decided to just put it out of mind, stop looking at it, because I hadn't had a chance to really circle back to it, and I was like, you know what, I could just build that on the show, and maybe even see how close I got to the original build. I don't even know if my original build saw the full trim that I'll do at the end of like one of these episodes, or if it was really just kind of like a workbench build. But I was confident there was something there, and I want to try it out. I've been having a lot of fun with Rimelocked Relics. I recently took Rimelocked Relics to Nova with Skaith, so that was the Chillblain Hunt build here on the channel. Only 2 cards different, because those were kind of some of the lessons learned from the field report when we played them. So the deck hasn't really changed since, which is really cool, and had a lot of fun playing that at Nova. I went 2-3 across 5 matches. Yes. And it started out 2-0, so I got super excited. I was like, oh my gosh, am I really going to be able to like push Chillblain Hunt up the bracket? Turns out after lunch the answer was no, not beyond that first 2-0 lead, which felt good. I had a blast playing them the whole time, and I think I managed to give my opponents hard outs, which is something we kind of talked about, where it was like, just if you're not going to win a match, make it close, make it as hard of a win for the other individual as possible, while obviously still having a good time playing a game together with individuals. I've also been digging pretty strongly Magor's Fiends with Rimelocked Relics. Did we have a fun name for that? I think we did. It was here on the channel. It was by Spinnerite. Yes, Magor's Rimelocked Rampage. So I've been playing this deck, no edits. And it is currently 5-0 in my local. It should not be. There was a hilarious game where I was up against Storm Coven with Seismic Shock, and I only had the demon left going into the 3rd round, Riptooth, I believe. And I mean, I was losing fighters so quick. It was like 3 damage from a Storm Coven fighter, ping, gone. 3 damage from a Storm Coven fighter, ping, gone. And that's not even upgraded Storm Coven fighters. So my grudge against that warband continues. Like that was my round 1 experience. Round 2, I lost my leader, at least by the end of it, and then Riptooth was my, again, only surviving fighter at the start of the 1st, and they won roll off and took first turn, charged me, killed me. Charged me, did enough damage to me to then ping me and kill me. And after they pinged me, they realized, I can't score anymore. And that they should have kept Riptooth alive, so they had another fighter, so their remaining fighter could charge to Riptooth and get the warband charged out, open up some movement while in that charged out state, so that they can get to objectives and whatnot. But between no longer having a target to attack for any scoring purposes that we're looking for that, and not being charged out, I actually bricked their scoring. So that was just a funny game. It's like the biggest asterisk, like next to like, yeah, technically that Magor's Fiends deck is 5-0 in my local. It's like, but one of them, it should not have won. Anyways, that's a lot of preamble. That's excitement about Rimelocked Relics. That's why it's the topic today. Brian, if you're watching, with a Y, from my local, I had kind of told him, hey, I test built this deck, and I think there's something there, because he'd recently picked up Krushas and tried them at our Q3 event. I was like, I think there's something there. Like, go ahead, try. Like, if that piques your interest, like, give that a go. And he, last time I saw him, was like, thanks for the tip. I'm really enjoying it. And I told him I was going to build it on the channel this week. So we'd have to compare notes. So I get to compare notes to like how my first draft looked. I get to compare notes to how Brian's deck looks. That's just some kind of fun context around today's build, and I'm really looking forward to it. I like playing it at League this week. We're gonna see how it does. But before we can jump into building Krushas, we have to tackle a field report for Coven of the Worm. So that's what we have up here in front. And let's see. All right. So, yeah, what I wanted to talk about with Coven of the Worm. So I was able to get 4 matches in for today's field report with them. Oh boy. Actually, I had wrote here, before we move on to Krushas, first we have to see how Jake and Zach's wheel of selection tortured me. I mean, how it felt to play Coven of the Worm. Because this deck, for those who might not remember, since this episode is 4 weeks since the last time we had a chance to see each other over the stream, and that's just because it's been a really busy time over here. We had that Q3 tournament, took up a ton of that weekend, and then work and life. I was like, oh, I can't really manage that. So it was like, hey, check out these stream videos, which we're really proud of. Like they're not like the first 3 like cut off, but we had such a blast doing them that we felt a lot of momentum and want to keep doing those. So if you haven't seen those yet, they're on the channel. I strongly recommend looking them up. They're the Madtown Throwdown Q3 matches. We were able to live stream them. The first 3 cut off. There's some lessons learned in streaming there. I won't get into the details of it, but it has to do with encoding and quitting your streamer like before encoding is done, essentially. But the 4th one, the finals, that's fully intact. Had a blast. Individual named Chomp, local of mine, friend of mine, was down to hang on the mic and do co-commentary together. So we're actually in another room where there's a live match happening and a cable running to a camera over there, and they can't hear us because we're behind a closed door, so we get to comment live. Really, really good time there. But then Nova after that as well. So like getting ready and leaving for Nova, and then coming back from Nova and being travel worn. That's so it's been a minute since Coven of the Worm was front of mind from like a build standpoint. And it performed, I would say, above expectations. My expectations were really low. So I played 4 games, won 2 of them, lost 2 of them. But I was, I guess I was impressed with how much play they had. I really enjoy this warband. It's my preferred pick between like the Arena and them, so your different Daughters of Cain options. And I think that's just because like as a framework, they feel more like a flex warband, and that fits into my playstyle, where Arena is going to be like full on aggro, right? And with Rhymeworm's Bite, I wasn't particularly looking forward to playtesting it here. Because it's, from day one, I just kind of identified it as a deck that really didn't fit my play style, and it was going to be something I'd have more enjoyment trying to play against and puzzle out how to fight against it than to adopt it as my own play style. It feels like taking red in Magic the Gathering, just going mono red. We're just going to try to burn down the opponent. It's just not my play style. It's not one that I lean towards or enjoy. And so, looking at the deck, I didn't think that there were too many inherent synergies, not as much as you'd see something with like Rimelocked Relics. Like I think that would go good here, and I think that I currently have an obsession. But I was surprised how much did seem to fit together here, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. I would say the roughest picture here is the end phase, and I don't think that you can really change it all too much. I mean, you can try any different combination of what's available to you, but I think we're kind of picking the best of bad options, and we're kind of stuck with them. I thought the surges were really good. I thought, some of the tools available to us in power worked great, but some of the end phase was just like far harder than other things built on the show. I think probably the only thing that stands as a harder deck to pilot was that awful Plague Pack deck that I built. So sorry again for those who have tried it and not seen the warnings that I did not like how that deck came together. I didn't think it performed admirably. Whereas here, again, I was surprised with what we were able to do. So our opponents were Domatan Stormcoven with Seismic Shock. I lost that game. And then, and there were some cool moments in that game, like cleave, on your leader is going to matter a lot there. So like at the beginning of the game, I knew that she was going to be an important piece, and then I was going to need to be a little cagier with her, get her to that 3 damage, and try to push that fighter. And she was able to take one of them down, so that felt good. I think this deck, Rhymeworm's Bite, paired with these fighters, if Morgok and Kyrie here did not have 2 dodge to start with, this deck wouldn't work at all. But thankfully, in a lot of my games, they were able to shake attacks that would have just changed like the tempo of the game. Whereas over here, Camus Kirsa, I've been pronouncing it Carissa for the longest time, and it's not that. There's no I snuck in there between the R and the 2 S's, so it's really like a Kirsa, which cool. I like that's cemented in my head now. How weird it is to roll an R next to 2 S's there. And Lethir, these fighters, like even when they get up to 2 dodge, if something sneaks through, they're dead. Whereas like Morgok and Kyrie, attacks being attempted against them might not be, kill target attacks. And so even if it sneaks through, they might have more life, beyond that moment. But you lose these fighters so fast, which was a bit of a bummer. And so if you were taking on damage as quickly with Morgok and Kyrie, I don't think this deck would function. And their deaths kind of help with something like Never Punished. So I'm just going to jump straight to, we'll circle back to the warbands that we played against. But Never Punished was one of the best objectives for them. And funny enough, it was because you're just dead. I was able to score this card from the grave twice. One game it mattered, one game it didn't. But it is funny. Like this was easily the most reliable card in the end phase suite across the games. I'm pretty sure I scored it in all 4 games. But okay, so Domatan Stormcoven, that was a loss, and that was pre-errata too, which we should talk about, right? We built this deck in the show. Rhymeworms might function a certain way, specifically the right bait and puncturing ice shards, and then those saw erratas that changed the way they function. We also saw clarification on Master of Disaster, which cemented the community stance that if a domain is discarded at the end of a round, then at the top of the next round is essentially when you're getting a reaction in with Master of Disaster to get a push or a stagger going. And that's really interesting. So I ended up really liking Master of Disaster as a result of that. And it felt good. It didn't feel broken here. I had a like personal dislike or distaste for seeing Master of Disaster on Siren Eye, and then seeing it work that way. And no offense to you Siren Eye players out there, it's just like there's so much maneuverability with your point and click off of Master and Disaster, and it's also getting stagger tokens out for you. Like it just felt like made for Siren Eye, and like fearfully incredible in her hands. But all right, so the other warbands I played against were Mollog's Mob with Rhymeworm's Bite. So we had the Rhymeworm's Mirror here, never punished. This is the game where that mattered. Scored it from the grave, and was able to like take the game as a result of that, even though I was tabled. Sepulchral Guard with Rimelocked Relics. This was a surprising win for me. I think the two cool moments that kind of like made this work is, well, one of them's not cool. One of them's just the way it was. Is they bottom decked Glacial Advance, so they didn't have, a push of 2, a really strong push of 2 available to them. The player even, kind of did a desperate move to, they did a desperate move to draw for it. I don't know why that was the right answer over like, oh, the Warden was dead. That was it. So I'd killed the Warden, which obviously is a big tempo setter. And then as a result of the Warden being dead, there was a desperate, like, I'm going to try to draw a card and see if I can't get Glacial Advance. Because if I spend my activation to move 1 fighter, it's not going to be enough. But if I luck into Glacial Advance, I'll be able to get 2 fighters into positions. And that'll help. And it didn't pan out. We bemoaned the fact that it was on the bottom of the deck afterwards. But the cool moment that came through was with Camus here. So Camus had Death Dancer on her. So after this fighter's attack action, not during a super action, push this fighter 1 hex. So Camus, I ran up to a fighter, and I'm between minimum distance to like objective tokens. And so I, with Camus, range 2 and actually hit the target on the other objective, even though I've got a negative support behind me. I was able to drive them off. And then with Bladed Buckler, I can't remember if I was inspired or not, but with Bladed Buckler, I was then able to knock the one off next to me, and then Death Dancer onto it after the fact. So that was really cool. Like, it was able during that Sepulchral Guard match to pull 2 skeletons off. I think one of them was even a kill. I think I must have been inspired because the second one was a kill. Also, good day. Thanks for joining, Wellner. I was missing you in chat. I was missing the good day to start the stream off with. So only one more match to cover. We'll cover a little bit more of their hardest objectives, best cards, and swaps I'd recommend. And we'll move on to today's build from there. So the other match was against Crimson Court plus Hungering Parasite. This was a loss. This was not a great game. I thought that Heaving Ground and Unstable Footing were going to go a little bit further in this because there's already a big priority fighter, essentially hanging out staggered already, and so I didn't end up drawing Heaving Ground. So that could have, influenced the game. I drew Unstable Footing, and they just didn't want to take it on. They're like, nah, that's fine. I'm not going to risk it. And there's enough break tech in there too to make sure that the fighter that they do want to do super actions with, they can, remove the Parasite, transfer it over to somebody else who's probably already activated and is taking on a stagger token, move it to them, and then get your charges in with your other fighters that aren't staggered. So it was a good game. Well, I enjoyed it. And there were different moments where key attacks, had they gone through, always moments like that in Underworlds where, on the dice's edge, the game could pivot, or if you're able to get this drive back, or if a card came up in the right order, if Glacial Advance wasn't bottom decked for that Sepulchral Guard. And I love all of the pivotal moments that add up to, they all feel small, they're one activation or one power card, but they can mean so much when it comes to painting the whole picture of a game of Underworld. So it doesn't bother me too much when a game goes sideways as a result of those pivotal moments, because we can look at them and we can be like, oh, if this had gone through, imagine what this looks like. So all right, enough anecdotal tangenting there. Instead, let's talk hardest objectives. So we have Blood Right. Scrolls immediately when a friendly fighter holding an objective makes an attack action that takes an enemy fighter out of action. So I guess my theory was with the amount of range we had between Morgok, Kyrie, and Camus here, that we could really get Blood Right to come together for us. What I found in practice was that this was more likely, if you could not make this true in round one, you were going to have far fewer opportunities to make this true across the rest of the game. And so I really didn't like it. But I wanted to make sure I brought this up. Lathanum is a community known Morgwaith's Blade Coven champion. This is his favorite warband, far and away. It's one of those names where if you hear Wathlab, you think immediately about the Chosen Axes. When I hear Lathanum, I think about Morgwaith's Blade Coven. So I alerted Lathanum to this build after we had built it together, and he right away was like, I don't think that this works. I don't think there's good synergies there. But what he did send along was what he calls the Blade Coven Nemesis Scaffold. And we have the Winter Maw tag there too. So, maybe this is something that he reviews, with the new seasons. How is the meta doing? Does the framework stay the same? And there's some great advice in here. So I actually really thought about this, as I was encountering issues with different cards. And so one of the swap recommendations that I'm making is to swap Blood Right out for Swift Sacrifice. I was surprised to see this in his scaffold, in his starting place. It was one that we had considered on the stream, but with the limitations here of it being Kyrie or your leader, I was like, I don't know. Do we really want this to be limited to those fighters? When a friendly leader or Kyrie makes a range 1 or 2 attack action that takes an enemy fighter out of action. And the fact that we can't use Kyrie's range 4 was another concern for me. However, in practice, there's an objective you're running called, what is it called? There's an objective you're running called Triumphant Stance. So you don't actually want to be full out holding. You want one fighter holding on your side. And so Blood Right kind of pulls at that and makes that harder, because you're trying to make attempts with Blood Right, or with fighters on objectives to score Blood Right, which is stacking the field too much for your ability to then score Triumphant Stance as an end phase for 2 glory. And when you're thinking about the surge in your hand, you also want to be thinking about what you could draw into. And so there's this uncomfortable push and pull here. But Swift Sacrifice, and this is where I think I missed, those are going to be your 2 healthiest fighters, your hardiest fighters. They're so key to the warband. It's them and Camus. Unfortunately, Kirsa and Lethir don't offer too much. And I'm gonna get to that because Rapturous Defense is a card that we're gonna swap out. So I guess just to say, I thought +1 defense was gonna be a sure in here, especially with my flex and hold mindset that I always naturally bring into a build. It is not a great pick here because you're essentially just trying to keep alive 2 fighters that are on borrowed time from the start of the game. And hilariously, 3 dodge, in theory it should work, right? But in each game where I got this out, they would go down anyways. One would, or a crit or something would slip through and then you wouldn't roll crits, and it was just oh, okay. So often this card felt like it was doing little or nothing for me. It wasn't completely invalued. It just didn't add up to support the overall picture enough, and it's attention on the wrong fighters. We really need these first 3 fighters to make it through the game as long as possible. Your first candidate for Inspire, probably Camus, because you're going to get to that 2 dodge and have a higher probability of then surviving. Hold on. Excuse me. Okay, so Bloodright, bad. Rapturous Defense, and this gets swapped out for... Oh. In my notes, I put down that I was going to swap out Rapturous Defense for Crimson Shard, but I'm already rocking Crimson Shard, so go us. I'll figure out another thing to swap this out for. But okay, Triumphant Stance is also the hard objective. I don't think there's gonna be a surprise here. This is what I was talking about, where like your end phase, they just kind of add up to a really rough picture, because it's like this is where your anti-synergy is the most. So one friendly fighter is holding an objective, and no other fighters is holding an objective. So you have to do things like that cool moment with Camus to really try to like peel enemy fighters off, but you have to maintain a presence of 1. And if you broadcast that, you have a good chance of losing that. Like your best time to score this is when you have Fanatical Faith in your hand. You're holding, or not Fanatical Faith. There's a card that we're going to bring in that's in his framework. Headlong Fury. I brought it in pretty quickly. So after the errata that happened, to right bait went out the door. And I brought in Headlong Fury, and then this card started benefiting Triumphant Stance. I don't think I'd ever build a deck without it now, for them. So like I totally understand why it's in the scaffolding here. Let's see. So, and actually taking a peek at the scaffolding, let's see. I would recommend Rune of Slaughter as our replacement for Rapturous Defense. I think that would be... I really wanted to try this card anyways. I thought it was going to be a lot of fun. And with how little Rapturous Defense did for us, I think go for it. So that would be a recommendation there as well. Cool. All right. I feel like I need to peel through this a little quicker since we're already hitting 12:30. But thanks for hanging. Yeah, I don't think you need to do too many gymnastics to see why Triumphant Stance is hard, but also it's worth the payoff. Like, it was fun to pursue, and I felt good when I scored it. And looking at our other options, I wouldn't cut it for something else. The other hard objective is Crowd Like Sheep, but this is just typically difficult. It means that either your opponent's game plan is all out one territory, and in order to counter this, they have, especially in a best of one, they kind of have to know that this card could be in your deck. So like the more you play against seasoned players, the harder this gets. And if they move somebody over into another territory, then you either have to drive that fighter back into the other territory, assuming they only have a foothold in it, or you have to have enough activations to take them down, which could be problematic. It was manageable, and I like the pressure it puts on your opponent in the sense that they have to think about it, or it could be an auto score for you. But it is difficult, especially when your opponents suspect it's in your deck and are working against it, because it doesn't take all too much effort to be like, I'm just going to go plant this fighter over here. Usually you've got somebody that you're willing to spare to jump into another territory and deny something like this. The denial is worth it, and very, like, I don't know, there's just so much range in the game where like you can usually like find a reason to leave somebody behind and range from there, or maybe you have a warband that doesn't need to send everybody. You get the picture. All right, we're gonna blitz through the rest of this. Never Punished is one of their best cards. I already talked about that. Death's Dancer. I love cards like this, just to be able to drive somebody off of an objective from an attack and then like react and push on. You can even do more with this. You know, it really helps your charged out fighter that have range. So like you can surf along the board a little bit with Morgok or Kyrie after their attack actions, which is a lot of fun, especially when you're like essentially moving around the board with range 2 bubble on Morgok, dealing potentially 3 damage. Death Dancer, easily one of my favorite cards for them. Catechism of Murder, hidden damage, accuracy, and reach, all in your fingertips. Your opponent has no idea, and even maybe defense. I rarely, if at all, used it for defense. I generally used it for like that extra movement speed, that extra damage, that extra accuracy. But just having this in your pocket is fantastic. I never cycled it or salvaged it because I never drew it when Morgok was dead. But I love that insurance on it as well, that it counts as a draw card. Catechism of Murder is probably my favorite card in this deck, period. Fanatical Faith, real good time. This is going to help you keep in the game, keep alive when otherwise your opponent is gearing up for a turn that's going to take a fighter off the board for you. And Perfect Kill. This is... I love cards like this. Is it... I'm calling this a best card. Maybe not. Maybe it's a favorite card. But you have pretty accurate attacks. And they range from 1 to 3 damage, and they come with good range options. So you have a lot of ways to situate Perfect Kill, getting that exact damage to take down your target. So lastly, we're just going to reiterate some of these swaps and blitz through them. Bloodright, getting swapped out for Swift Sacrifice, already talked about. The Right Bait, switching this out for Headlong Fury. The reason here, so Right Bait now damages you and your opponent, which doesn't help with your Never Punished picture. What it does help with is Deadly to All, and I love that trade-off personally. And you can engineer the Right Baits with upgrades to also not damage you. However, with something like Tough Enough or Boots of Warding. However, it's not a domain, and we have some domain stuff going on as well in here. I would rather get rid of the Right Bite and bring in that out of sequence move. Was ultimately kind of the call I ended up making. Puncturing Ice Shards, the change to this doesn't impact you too much. You can tempt people into scoring Deadly to All for you by positioning one of your fighters in such a way where like your opponent is going to be like, oh yeah, I'll totally take a wound to throw at you. But Puncturing Ice Shards, I found with 5 fighters, it was hard to like set up the double tap. Anyways, I only got 1 game trying to attempt the double tap, and that was against Domatan Stormcoven. It was my first game. So maybe for those seasoned with this deck, it was a little easier to set up the... unfortunately, you, my opponent, have to deal damage to yourself twice. Rapturous Defense, Crimson Shard. So instead of Crimson Shard, we're going to swap that out for Lathanum's recommendation of Rune of Slaughter. We're going to last swap here, like an Avalanche. So this cannot be given to a large fighter. Not a problem here. Reaction, use this after a domain card is discarded. Remove this fighter's move and or charge tokens. So I liked this a lot. The one time it went off, when like you could just, you're nowhere near charged out, and then surprise, I'm going to put this down. I've already got a domain in play. Put another domain down, and my leader can now charge again. However, that is an amazing hand that just lined up for you. I found that we're running 4 domains and the chance to recur one of them. So we have essentially 5 domains, which means you're at most triggering domain removal 4 times during the game, at most. But more often than not, it's going to happen at the end of a round. And Master of Disaster can make use of that, whereas like an Avalanche isn't really going to make use of that moment for you. So it's not going to happen enough to justify bringing it along for the ride, especially when you could bring something like Tough Enough, which can more directly help you with Never Punished. So this was a card I was disappointed to, like, in practice, like, or I guess in theory, like looking at it, I was like, this effect is so good. I have to bring this. This is going to be amazing. Like, why am I not seeing this in Rhyworm's Bite builds? I figured out why I'm not seeing it in Rhyworm's Bite builds. It's like only gonna happen 1 or 2 times during the game, and that could be valuable to you. Like that could be enough. But it's also pushing and pulling against Master of Disaster. So if you have both out, you have to choose which one you're going to use. And I would rather take the stagger in a lot of the instances that were presented to me. Or the push. But like an avalanche, cool in theory, cool in those special moments where it works out for you. But a lot of setup. All right, so that is the field testing for Blade Coven. And I didn't get a chance to play against Jake or Zach. So if you see this and you're like, hey, we were the ones who rolled the wheels of selection that steered this episode into existence and this build into my hand, why didn't we get a chance to play against it? Yeah, let me know. I'll bring it up for another spin. I haven't torn the deck apart yet. There's really no point in me tearing the deck apart because I'm probably not going to use Rimelocked Bite for anything else since it's really not my cup of tea. So just let me know and it can come out. In the meantime, today's focus, 40 minutes into the episode, maybe I'm rusty. I know I was just kind of chit-chatting at the start of the episode, so that's a bit on me too. Excited to be chatting with y'all and getting another What the Decks episode out. There have been different points in time where I've thought to myself, like, I've kind of met what I'd originally set out to do with What the Decks. So it's the feedback I've gotten from people that has like kind of given me momentum to like keep the show going. And so when I saw like a hiatus of 3 weeks, I was like, oh no, like, is this kind of a sign that life is getting really busy right now? We're going to talk about that at the end of the episode. There's I've got some plans for some future episodes, and part of that has to do with trying to manage how busy life has gotten on this side. Like, do I need to take this as a sign? Do I need to kind of put the show on a greater hiatus? And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to come back and build more decks with you and engage with those out there that find value in this show. So if you're watching and you enjoy the show, like this is for you, and I have fun doing it. So I don't know about that one, Chief. Lathinum probably looking at the deck from Wellner. Agree. Also, just a hello out there to chat. Great to see you, Jake, Wellner, and Ben. Okay, so let's dive into Morgok's Krushas. Let's not delay any longer. So why was I like, oh, we have to try this build? And that is because of some of their surges, which we'll take a look at together. So let's clear deck editor. Gotta load them up. We gotta go down to the Beast Grave. All right, so let's toss one of these in so we can take a look at their fighters. So it's twofold. The reasons that I really wanted to try this warband with Rimelocked Relics. Threefold. First point is the crown. I wanted to find a warband where I felt like the crown made sense. So spoilers, that's making it into this build. And the reason it makes sense is because of their errata. So is that listed here? Yeah, okay. So here at the top, each fighter, change the Inspire condition to read as follows. In an Inspire step, you can remove 2 Wah counters from this card. Wah, Mr. Bond. If you do, inspire this fighter. So that's Morgok, Ardskull, and Thug. My wife is sick right now, and I think she's getting me sick. My voice is like either not practiced or down a slippery slope. So I think I'm going to indulge in water quite often for the rest of the video. So hopefully that doesn't get too distracting. But it'll keep me talking. Wah is generated. Let's take a look. So Morgok, after this fighter's activation in which they made one or more attack actions, place one wall counter on this card. That's going to be on all 3 of them. So at this point in time, they hadn't. They didn't always. If there was room on the cards, they'd be like, just put it on all the cards. Whereas more modern design, or even some of the other design in that season, I think, would see like that put out with an ability name, and then that ability name translated over to the other fighters. But here we see it printed on all 3, so that's what the words across them are. But check this out. Uninspired Morgok also has action, remove 1 Wa counter from this card, then push each friendly fighter up to 2 hexes. It doesn't have to inspire to get to this ability. So how they used to work, so they still gained Wa the same way. That hasn't changed. It did for a minute. They had a beta rule. Long story. Like all of a sudden, it was charges that they could only gain Wa from, and then they decided to give it back to them on attacks. But now, instead of just having 2 Wa counters, they have to spend 2 Wa counters. And when you go over to their other sides, they've got really cool abilities. As far as aggro fighters go anyways, that all need you to spend Wa counters. But it's like, well, I spent them to get inspired. And like, I don't know how many of these I can really like accumulate over the course of the game. So we take a look at Morgok's ability here, and how many cards can generate Wa. And there's a number of them. And so we're going to bring as many of them as we can, because that's one of the mission statements, is use Morgok's action to push these 2 fighters, because it's each, let's see, from this card, then push each friendly fighter. Wow, okay. Every time I read that, I'm surprised. Each friendly fighter up to 2 hexes. So that includes Morgok. So we can spend Wa and push, theoretically, 3 fighters onto 3 different objective tokens. And that's big. We got 5 health. We're hardy. We're hard to move. So use his push as much as possible to get these big beefy fighters onto objectives, and then start playing counterpunch. And find a warband that you can use the crown with, and it makes sense. And I think it makes sense here because we get to dodge having to spend 2 Wa counters, and all of a sudden we have them for our abilities on the other side. And we'll take a look at those. I think I said there was another reason. I think that was all the reasons. Okay, so that kind of like attracted me to this idea. And so if we flip them over and we take a look at what they have as far as inspirations go, and these are 3 large fighters as well. Like, I think they kind of overcorrected a little bit when they like came out with this errata for their inspire, because it was about the exact same time that large fighter became 5 wounds instead of 6 wounds. And so it was almost like they got hit twice. It was like, whoa. Like, I think the charge rule was fine, but now you're making it so they actually have to spend their Wa counters before they even get to the other side, and they each give up 2 glory when they die. But despite all that, I still think that this is going to be a good build. I still want to try this. So boss Choppas, you can re-roll 1 attack dice in the attack roll for this attack action. So that's just something Morgok gets. Otherwise, Morgok is gaining a 4th movement speed and going to 3 dice on his main attack. But he's already hitting for 3 on his other side. I don't need to inspire Morgok to enjoy Morgok in this build. And then over here, we continue to have our unique action. So he doesn't actually have another way to spend Wa counters, and that's okay. So Ardskull and Thug. So Ardskull is going up to 4 movement speed, and then from 2 swords to 3 on his Gore Basha here. Also gaining Scything, so that's fun. What's not to love? And then Gore Basha. So his main attack gains remove any number of Wa counters from this card before making the attack roll. The attack action has +1 damage for each counter you remove. So all of a sudden you have an attack that is going to just increase beyond 3 in how much damage it can deal, and it's on 3 swords already, which feels pretty accurate. And then over here, Thug, his weapon stays the same for the most part. I think, yeah, smashes. We'll see here in a moment. Has some more to it, and then he goes up to that 4 movement speed. So smashes remove any number of walk counters from this card before making the attack roll. That attack action has +1 dice for each counter you remove. So we can make this attack more and more accurate. And we can just kind of rely on him doing 2 damage when we need be. So Morgok is our action economy. Ardskull is our problem solver. And then Thug is just our highly accurate minion farmer. Okay. So, and the Surges. The Surges was the third reason. So the Crown, Morgok's action, and their Surges. So if we take a look at their Surges, why do I think that they're exciting to be paired with Rimelocked Relics? Let's go ahead and filter this a little further so that we're good to go for the rest of the episode. Okay, so they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Surges. Got it, boss. Score this immediately after an activation if your warband holds 1 or more objectives in enemy territory. So after an activation, not your not your opponent's activation, or your own specifically, right? So it can be either, which means you can start your turn and end your turn in this state. We can use the push to get there if we're close enough. Probably not. We're probably going to have to use move or some sort of tricks to help make this work. But as long as we get there at the end of our turn, and that could just be like first turn push into a position where I have 2 options, and then next turn I take one of those 2 options, assuming I haven't been driven back. So absolutely want to take that. And then I think there's hold 2 as well. Yeah. Score this immediately after an activation if your warband holds 2 or more objectives. Doesn't matter where. So for Seed Glory, if we have gambits that are going to give us Wah, and we'll take a look at that, then we might be able to play that going into our turn, and then just use our leader to push onto 2 objectives. Boom, we have our Seed Glory. We're also in some pretty great positions for the rest of the deck then. And like Got It, Boss, we can score this off of Gelid Cyclone as well. Cool. All right, I'm going to get rid of Avalanche Aggression. And we're off to the races with our build. So let's see. I'm going to just... This was a little blown up on this side, so just bringing that down a few percentages. And let's see. So in chat, while they're here, Ultramarines, Mr. Bond. How predictable. I cast the jump on my boys and jump them behind your gun line. The jump. Ultra. Okay. I follow. I have no more commentary to add, though. Ooh, all right. I'm losing my voice actively while we're doing this. That's a bummer. I really want to push this through and enjoy this build together. All right, so what else do we have for surge opportunities? Now, when I build Rimelocked Relics now, or play Rimelocked Relics, I'm looking for, right out of the gate, I'm looking for Glacial Dominion, Frostbitten Strike, and Defrosted. So Defrosted, a friendly fighter's Rimelocked upgrade is turned face up, and that fighter is holding an objective. Gelid Cyclone scores this card instantly, and they did end up confirming that in the latest FAQ that we got as well. So Gelid Cyclone is, you're going to get a Thaw counter. If you get your 3rd Thaw counter on any Rimelocked face down, then it's going to flip up, and it flips up going into your reaction step. Essentially, it's considered to be part of the reaction step, but it's prioritized first before reactions occur. And so if it flips up, you can then, you're still immediately after the activation, and you can reposition that way. And you're also still within like immediately after this card turned face up. And so you get to check as a result of, you essentially pause the game, take a reaction off of Gelid Cyclone, and then recheck, like, okay, now like flipping this card up created these reaction, or one of these 2 reactions to happen. So we're going to put the game on hold take care of those, and then it's like, okay, we're going to check. So now after this card flipped face up, where is it? And you get to bring into like the state of that moment where that reaction moved you. And a fun thing is, and this is like one of those tips and tricks that you figure out as you're playing the game and you learn more about this is like a deep dive trick. This is probably confusing to new people. Is, you know, when you go to score an objective like this, if it says immediately after an activation, then if you're already in that position, you can put the surge down on the table and say, I'm going to mark this as scored. And then you can take a reaction to move yourself off of that scoring position without compromising the scoring that you just did. And the same is true in reverse. You're not on the position, but you take a reaction immediately after the activation to get on the position. You can now mark that you've scored the card and put it down on the table. So you get wiggle room on both sides when you're looking at something positionally immediately after an activation, which is really fun. So Gelid Cyclone, just the way it rides in that immediately after an activation, works with something like Defrosted, works with something like Got It Boss, or heck, it could even be our second objective that we're now holding for Now Want. So Gelid Cyclone is obviously going to be making it to this neck, and Defrosted isn't the only relic. You know, we could already be in a position and score here. All right. So Frostbitten Strike. An enemy fighter is taken out of action and your warband holds one or more objectives. I think we still take this. I don't 100% know. So what's nice about this is it can be any of your fighters. So you can get somebody in position and then one of these like absolute hulks can go smash another fighter and then be like, you know, point back to the one that's holding an objective and be like, hey, see what I just did? I got you Forbidden Strike. And so it still feels good, I think, but we're probably not scoring it from our objective positions. This will pull us off of them, and we'll probably have to then find ways back on. But that push doesn't care about move or charge tokens. So as long as Morgok is live and not activated, we can just keep using this. And if somebody wants to peel us off of objectives, like we get him onto one and then we just keep using this, maybe we get driven off. We take some damage, get driven off. Like we can use this to get right back on it if they can't chew through 5 health. Okay, so then Glacial Dominion. Score this immediately after an opponent's activation step if one or more friendly fighters holding an objective has one or more Rimelocked upgrades. So the best way to score this card is to have 2 Rimelocked upgrades in your hand, because this doesn't care if they're face up or face down. And you have 2 fighters holding objectives, and you give each of them 1, and you pass turn, and you're just like, all right, like your turn. You can take one of these fighters off of one of these tokens, but the other one's going to score me Glacial Dominion. And as you play more into Rimelocked Relics, you see this happen, and you're like, oh, well, I know what they're doing, and I can't stop it. That relies on you drawing multiple relics. Phil, if you're watching, I'm sorry. He recently, so from the get-go, I've been hot on this deck and he's been colder. I mean, ice cold to start. I think he's warmed up a little, but he tried them recently and got like all 4 or 5 of the Rimelocked relics he brought were like the bottom of his deck somehow. I don't know what the odds look like on that, but he just was not drawing them, and like all of his objectives wanted him to draw at least one of them, and it just wasn't happening for him. So here I am being like, oh, if you're spoiled and you have 2 of them, go ahead and set those down and then just watch the surge score. And Phil's over there just screaming at me. I can hear it from here. But some cards that we could consider. I don't think Icy Grip's a great pickup here. I have to look to see if we can bring the one that isn't driven back. There's a number of upgrades. In fact, let's take a beat. I know this is off cadence for us. Let's take a beat and go look at our upgrades, because I don't know how many of them are large fighter restricted, or at least I want to get an idea of that. We'll just take a look. Hey, what's large fighter restricted? And so we keep that in mind as we're looking at the rest of this. Okay, so yeah, the skin boots are, which is what I was just referring to. So we can get pushed off of objectives without being able to play this card, and shore that up. And then Snowblind Cloak, we're not going to be able to use either. So we're not going to be able to take on this damage mitigation picture. That's totally fine. I knew I wasn't going to be able to bring this card along. I couldn't remember on this card. But knowing we can't bring the boots, I think puts Icy Grip out of the picture. Because pretty much the only way we're going to score Icy Grip is if our short, stubby legs somehow find their way onto what I like to call a landing pad, which is an objective token in their territory next to one of their... I mean, landing pad is just usually an objective that I want to land on their territory. But in this context, it would be also next to a starting hex that they populated. And if that's not true, we're not getting Icy Grip. We would need to get the bow and arrow going. So I think Icy Grip is probably a leave out, which is weird because I normally take that in my Rimelocked Relics builds as well. But what else can they bring along? Call to Wa. Score this immediately after an activation if there are 6 or more Wa counters on friendly fighters' fighter cards. Is your Inspire a must? You can remove. So we can build them up, and then we can remove them. I don't 100% have my head wrapped around what our generation is going to look like, so we can slot that in as an option, but already I'm feeling like that's probably going to be on the cutting floor. Might of the Orc. Score this immediately when a friendly fighter's attack action with a damage characteristic of 4 or more succeeds. Well, we can bring along +1 damage from Rimelocked. There aren't many ploys that we really want from Rimelocked, generally speaking, so we might have room for it. That could be a +1 damage on a stick. We could see what else they have to help with that, because +1 damage would get Morgok and Ardskull up to where we can score Might of the Auric. And then once Ardskull gets inspired, obviously he can then work on that as well. So this feels realistic. I think we can bring that along. Auric Cunnin. Score this immediately when you play your 3rd or subsequent Gambit in this round. I hate cards like this. I don't know why. I wish I didn't hate cards like this. I will try it. There must be a card like this that hurt me at some point in time. Or looking at here, we're gonna go to Warbands. Alex has one in Kagra's that I hate for him. Malevolent Exploits. Score this immediately after playing your 3rd or subsequent power card in a single power step. I guess this is in a single power step. I guess that's why I hate it. Because this one ends up preventing him from being able to play reactions as well. And it doesn't work really well as Seed Glory when you have upgrades. I get why he takes it. It's not a bad card, but it does edge reactions out of your build, and I don't like that. And then upgrades, again, just don't contribute to it when you're in round 1 and you really need Seed Glory to get to those upgrades. So this is Gambits across the whole round. So what's going to happen is if I take this card, I'm going to have a starting hand at some point where I see this, and I'm going to draw... or I'm going to have 2 Gambits in my hand, and I'm going to spend a turn venturing to draw a power card, and it's not going to be a Gambit, and I'm going to be so sad. And then do I spend another turn? Can I afford another turn? Will it be? Do I just save this for next round? And then next round I get the same picture, a 3 and 2 again, and it's just like that's my experience with cards like these. And I think it is just that niche little torture for me in the game that doesn't happen to other individuals. Like, I think this is generally considered to be a reliable and good card. We'll slot it in, we'll try it out. It's probably going to make the cut. It's probably going to torture me. But like, it doesn't require dice to be rolled. And I mean, if you just draw 3 Gambits in your starting hand and this, like, you have Seed Glory before you've taken an activation, potentially. So I get it. All right. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're tempted by all 5 of their surges. So again, banger surges for them, particularly the 2 hold ones for our Rimelocked Relic builds. Defrosted, Frostbend, Striking, Glacial Dominion, getting us up to 8. I feel really good. I think the cut can really be whatever we need it to be based on the rest of the build. I don't feel pressured into any of these picks. Oh, you know what? I kept saying Icy Grip, but Shattered Defenses was the card I meant. So when I was talking before about needing a landing pad to attack from, that was in regards to Shattered Defenses, or needing the arrow. That's what this was for. Icy Grip we can actually consider here. So Total Conquest, I'm going to go with no. Score this immediately after an opponent's activation step if 1 or more enemy fighters are out of action. That part I'm not worried about. And your warband holds 2 or more objectives in no one's and or enemy territory. I'm a little worried about that. I think, after some games with this, I might change my mind and want to put this in and greed for that extra 2 glory. But right now, I don't feel the need to greed. I feel like I can just grab these reliable surges, and let's see where else we can pick up extra glory from, instead of hamstringing ourselves into Total Conquest. You get long boarded, and you're already going to be having to manage an uphill situation for yourself. Adding something like Total Conquest on top of that is going to be tough. But they're pictured in Icy Grip, so it's going in to considerations. Icy Grip being score this immediately after an opponent's activation step if your warband holds 2 or more objectives and 1 or more of those objectives are in no one's and or enemy territory. This is another card where Gelid Cyclone is really cool, because if you time it right, if you time, hey, we're going into my opponent's activation, that's when you put Gelid Cyclone down, because then the opponent will go, it'll get a Thaw counter, you'll go, it'll get a Thaw counter, the opponent will go again, it'll get its 3rd Thaw counter immediately after their activation. Gelid Cyclone flips up, teleports you into one of the spots that it describes. That's an objective token not in your territory, and as long as you're holding another one somewhere else with another fighter, boom, this just scored for you. So that's another way. That card is, you want to see it in every game. That card is the best scoring assistant objective or upgrade. The other best upgrade in here is Layfrost Conduit, just because it's a powerhouse, but it doesn't directly support the scoring as much as Gelid Cyclone does. Okay, so on to our end phase here. Do we have any 3rd end phase? We don't. Okay, we don't have to worry about that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So they're bringing 7 of their own options. One of them for 5. Score this in an end phase if all enemy fighters are out of action. At that point, I hope you've already won the game, so you don't need to bring this. Even if you were to achieve it, you shouldn't need this. We're also not building fully aggro. We're building counterpunchy. We want to stubbornly sit on objectives and attack people when they take a problem with that. Okay, so let's filter this by glory. So we're not going to grab that. We're not going to grab Wintry Conquest either. It would be really greedy of us to grab Wintry Conquest. Your warband holds 3 or more objectives. If one of you is down, this is out. It is a great payoff. And the other stipulation here is you have to also have a Rimelocked upgrade on at least one of your fighters that are holding. So we'd have to have all 3 of us holding. And that also kind of forces us into maintaining that, not just staying alive, but constantly maintaining a hold 3 instead of a hold 2. And I think we want to instead work on maintaining a hold 2. What's cool about this card though is it doesn't require face up or face down Rimelocks. So if you have the models and the wherewithal to be on 3, it's a great 3 glory pickup. Good day's work. Score this in an end phase if there are more enemy fighters out of action than surviving enemy fighters. There are more enemies out, dead, than surviving enemy fighters. I think we can try this on for size. It might get cut because it's pulling us away from our mission statement. But if you're up against like Domatan, and normally this is a card that I kind of knee jerk away from. But you're starting on 3 damage with 2 fighters. You're going to be able to take somebody out over the course of the game. And so like if you're up against a 3 fighter warband, you need to take 2 of them out. Where this gets harder is anytime you're up against even. So if you're up against a 4 fighter warband, let's say head Krushas, you have to take 3 of them out. So I could see this getting cut. All right, Cold Front. Your warband holds more objectives than each other warband, and more enemy fighters than friendly fighters have wound counters. This is not happening. We cannot take this card. We are going to have 3 wounded fighters very often. And so to then have to deal wounds to your opponent and not kill them, it's not what we excel at. We excel at deleting fighters and pretending they never existed. So Icebound Defenders is next. This we can bring. Score this in an end phase if your warband holds 2 or more objectives and your warband holds each objective in 1 or more territories. So the best way to secure this for yourself is to try to position the objectives at the beginning of the game where there's 1 in the middle, or like in no one's territory. Then that unlocks that as your like place that you're holding all. It also helps with things like Icy Grip. However, it doesn't help with the 1 in enemy territory, that surge. So preferably you're focusing on that surge, because that surge could be your seed glory and you're putting 1 just over the line to land on. But if you're going wide with the boards and you can afford to, try to get 1 in no one's territory, and then on the wings of where you put that, you can try to position 1 just over the line as a landing place for you. But you have to hold all in 1 territory, so it doesn't matter if it's a player's territory or no one's. So if you make it no one's, you make it much easier for yourself. The other way to help yourself out with this is to make sure that you only have 2 in your territory, so that your territory is just a solid option for scoring Icebound Defenders. Steaming Corpses, I think we can consider this. We will have to kill instead of be killed. Like normally when I run Steaming Corpses, I'm relying on being killed, or being able to like quickly sacrifice a fighter over a lethal in order to make this happen for myself. But here we'll have to be like freezing one of theirs and then taking them out with Frozen Solid, or we have to bring the upgrade that range 1 attacks will instantly Rimelock something, even if it's killing the fighter on its way out the door. And so because of that, I think we're okay to bring this. We can send one of our fighters off of an objective sometime if they have that upgrade, or if they got a lucky Frozen, to try to kill somebody and make Steaming Corpses work for us. I get asked how this card works for me all the time. I love the tension of like, oh, my fighter's about to die, here's an upgrade. Like, now you have to decide if I'm going to score this card or you're going to leave that fighter alive. And they're both bad options. Like, if you leave that fighter alive, that's awesome. Thank you. I want more time with that fighter. If you kill him or her, them, I will gain 2 glory. And then I like running Winterborn Might, which allows me to take the thought counters off and gain extra dice going into the next activation for that fighter. And so I'll just pull tokens off of that fighter to prolong that awkward situation I've put you in. And then I also run lethals just in case I need to sacrifice my own fighter if it really comes down to it. I'd rather give you 1 glory and grab 2 for myself, especially if I'm running anything that can resurrect. But normally, like when I'm playing Chillblade Hunt, that's a job that Lihan can be saddled with. I can be like, hey, I'm sorry, my half fighter cat, go get me some glory. But next up, Stolen Warmth. This is an easier card to justify. We need to kill 2 of them. That's it. And then 2 or more of our fighters need to have face-up Rimelocked upgrades. We're hardy enough where we're going to be able to survive long enough to have those face-up upgrades. So we do have to kill 2 fighters. But I feel like both part of these. So like if this card just said kill 2 fighters for 2 glory at any point during the game, doesn't even need to be the same phase. it would get taken like a lot. So the holdup is sometimes, are they going to have the upgrades? And here we just have so much health that I think it's going to be inconsequential. All right. So then, how are we doing? We've got 4. These 3 I feel good about. Good day's work I don't. We might have to try for Wintry's Conquest. I don't love that idea. Or we might have to flex into the 2 Glory Surge. Can't remember the name. Total Conquest. Yeah. Okay. So let's see what we have for 1 Glory options. Score this in end phase if there are more surviving friendly fighters than surviving enemy fighters. I don't think this is a great idea in this current meta. This is a meta pick. You are hardy, but you have to fight against like Sepulchral Guard right now. They're on the up, and Mark recently, Baconborn, had them at Nova. It wasn't the only one with them at Nova with Rimelocked Relics, and I think that deck continues to prove itself. And Mark was able to pilot it to the finale there with. I mean, the meta is always changing, but right now we saw Hungering Parasite. Oh, okay, so we saw Breakneck Slaughter like become something that people are less inclined to take just because they have to get used to a different power ceiling on it. Well, payout ceiling on it. But its toolkit is still the same, so it's probably still a pretty good aggro option. It's just paying out a little less, but you're still hopefully getting plenty of bounty for it. But that was enough to like kind of pull it out of the meta for a moment. And we saw a little bit less Rhyworm's Bite as well, because we saw Puncturing Ice Shard not being able to double tap as hard as it was before, and the right bait coming with a cost now. And so then it kind of came down to like, okay, so like Hungering Parasite's really strong, really popular, but this FAQ also formalized a lot of things that we were already considering, put into, print that you can freeze the Parasite, and that can be a really bad time for the Parasite player. So we saw a lot of Rimelocked Relic at Nova. I think it was probably the most represented deck there. And I think we're going to see a lot more hold now too. And then we'll see like aggro come back. So like there's that ebb and flow. Anyways, that's all to say. If you think that you're going to be facing a horde, then a card like Avalanche of Aggression for 1 glory is just not an option for you. Or if you think that you're fighting Resurrection, it's just not an option for you. So there's enough reasons for this to clunk out and not be a good pick in general. But when it would edge its way into a deck would be a meta call, and this isn't quite that moment. So Brutes is the best. Score this in end phase if your leader is the only surviving leader. Our game plan is going to be run out of our leader. He's going to be a very healthy linchpin, but he's going to be a linchpin. So he's going to have a target pain on his back. And we've got short, stubby legs. I don't know how easy it's going to be for us to get to their leader. There's a lot for 1. So we're going to hold off on that. In their element, score this in an end phase if each surviving friendly fighter is inspired. So we got to get a lot of Wah to make that happen. I don't like that. It's probably not happening round 1. We can slot it in, take a look at how much Wah generation we're going to have. But I have a feeling that's a really hard oneer. Propa Rumble, score this in an end phase if 4 or more fighters are out of action and or have wound tokens. This we can take. We are 3 fighters that will very quickly be a part of this equation. And so we just need to spread it around a little bit. If we're only 2 of our fighters are getting attention, we need to give 2 of their fighters attention. This I like. We can do this. Wah Unleashed. Score this in an end phase if you removed 4 or more Wah counters from friendly fighters' cards in the previous phase. Well, we're going to be removing them from our leader, and then we're also going to probably inspire one of the others at some point for 2. So if we used our leader's ability twice, and their ability or their inspire once, maybe. Again, we got to take a look at Wah generation. And a line in the snow. 1 or more enemy fighters are out of action, and 2 or more friendly fighters are in no one's and or enemy territory. It does force us into enemy territory. I don't mind that picture all too much. I think we could try it out. So we've got some good one options here. I think the WA generation ones are probably the ones I'll pull out. And you know what? We're going to put in Wintry Conquest because I'm concerned with some of this equation. Like the 3 things I feel the best about are A Line in the Snow, Icebound Defenders, and Steaming Corp. Wait, no, sorry, not A Line in the Snow. Yeah, sure. I mean, it's fine, but it's 1. But Icebound Defenders, Steaming Corpses, and Stolen Warmth, I feel good about all 3 of those. We might push for the like deal with us equation of Wintry Conquest. That could be fun. You're going to need to mulligan for this card though, if we do run it. Okay. So now we can go here, and first thing we're going to do is we're just going to, so we're in ploys now. Let's take a look. How do I spell WA? 3 A's. 3 A's for WA. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we have 7 gambits that use or generate WA, and 3 upgrades that do the same. Let's see. Let's take a look at these upgrades real quick. After an attack action that targeted this fighter, place 1 WA counter on this fighter's fighter card. That sounds awesome. Hey, you targeted me. Doesn't matter if it hit or not. I'm upset about it. Let's WA. All right. Then Vessel of the WA. Action, place 1 WA counter on the fighter card of each friendly fighter within 2 hexes. Okay. It's good to know that we can use an action to generate. And it's not each other, so it would include this fighter. Let's put it up there. I don't feel strongly about this one. I don't know if that's how we want to spend our actions, but maybe. Well, if we're on 3 objectives when we're doing this, though, then we're not going to be in a position to cover each other because you're going to be with 3 away minimum in those cases. And then WA, Edbutt. Remove any number of WA counters from this fighter's fighter card before making the attack roll. +1 damage to that attack action for each counter removed. So we could get this as an early upgrade before we inspire them and then pump tokens into it. Potentially do, 1 range 1, 2 hammer, 4 damage attack for 2 tokens. Not the worst thing. I actually didn't want to put it in. I think once we get to upgrades, we'll have a better idea of that. And it's spending instead of generating. I want to think about generating right now. Okay, so Berserk Fortitude. Reaction. Play this during an attack action that targets a friendly fighter before the deal damage step. Remove any number of WA counters from that fighter's fighter card. That attack action has -1 damage for each counter removed to a minimum of 1. What? Okay, cool. We're taking this. It is another source of spend, but I mean, like, we can just shake a 3 damage attack down to 2 with 2 counters. And this can just be in our hand ready to go at any point in time. That feels really rude. Berserk Strength. Reaction. Play this during a friendly fighter's range 1 or range 2 attack action after choosing a target. Remove any number of WA counters from that friendly fighter's card. +1 damage for that attack action for each counter removed. So we have the ability that would normally just be baked into Ardskull's Basha, Gore Basha. We have that ability on a stick for any of our fighters. And this could help get us that 4 damage surge, which I don't know if we're going to take, but we can consider. Because we need to see more of the rest of the picture yet. Brawling. Choose 1 friendly fighter adjacent to 1 or more enemy fighters. Place 1 WA counter on the chosen fighter's card. Perfect. We need some... I think we strongly need some form of generation here. So far we haven't seen anything that can help our leader generate, like, out of the gate. So we need to kind of find that. Hopefully that's in here. Brutal attack. +1 dice to the first attack action made by a friendly fighter in the next activation. After that attack action, place 1 Wa counter on that fighter's fighter card. So, hey, your next attack is going to get an extra dice and an extra Wa, because you're going to get a Wa anyways from making that attack. Okay, I like that. We do have to continue to engage in aggro. Like Brawling has to see us next to somebody. Brutal Attack has to see us attacking. Eager Advance. Choose one friendly fighter and push them 1 hex. Place 1 walk counter on the chosen fighter's fighter card. This is what I'm talking about. This is what we want. That's awesome. All right, so then Power of the Wa. Choose one friendly fighter and roll 2 magic dice. For each roll of a focus, heal 1 the chosen fighter. Sure. Yeah, I'm not used to managing this much health. But I mean, healing doesn't seem bad. So Wa is in the name there. It's not actually generating anything for us. And then Wa energy. Roll 1 magic dice for each surviving friendly fighter. On a roll of channel, place 1 Wa counter on that fighter's fighter card. Okay, perfect. So Wa energy and Eager Advance are going to be things that we want to see early to help us start generating for our leader, and then generating his action to get us pushing these beefcakes around the board. So we've got 7 selected already. I mean, they probably only have 10 to choose from, so there's only 3 other of theirs that we need to look at. And we're not going to take too much from Rimelocked in the Gambit section. These 2 both cost us Wa, but have a strong value. So let's take a look at the rest of the ploy picture here. Brutal Cunning. Reaction. Play this after a friendly fighter's move action, but not during a super action. That fighter makes an attack action. If we were playing like Void Curse Thralls, that would be awesome. So you can use the refashioned reaction to move next to somebody and then immediately react with Brutal Cunning and attack them. Here, I don't... Well, you know what? We could get to the charged out state. I don't know how much we're going to experience the charged out state here, but if we were experiencing the charged out state, then we could move and attack off of it. That's tempting. I feel like that deserves consideration. Brutal Reprisal. Reaction. Play this during an attack action that targets a friendly fighter and succeeds. Before the drive back step, the friendly fighter cannot be driven back and makes an attack action that must target the attacker. Yes, please. So we get to say, hey, we're staying on this objective, and we're gonna attack you back. And this is in our pocket, so they don't know, like, this isn't broadcasted as an upgrade. I think a lot of the times if you saw this ability today, it would be on an upgrade instead of in a gambit like this. And their last one, Cunning Brutality. Reaction. Play this after a friendly fighter's attack action, but not during a super action. Push them up to 3 hexes. Okay, so apparently I just love their power suite. At least the ploy side, because this also sounds awesome. We do have to be... Play this after a friendly fighter's attack action, but not during a super action. During is the keyword here. We saw the same thing with Camus and their Swift Step, or what is it called? That's not right. There is a upgrade over there that allows them to push 1 afterwards. And it also said, but not during a super action. And so she can do it on the attack that ends the super action, but she can't do it mid-scything. Well, so here it's scything, but for her it was combo. Does that make sense? Wait. Maybe it's meant for scything in both cases, because both warbands came out when Mighty Swing was something that you could bring, which is a ploy that just gives you access to your next range 1 attack has scything. So that's probably the during language there. So that's all to say. This says I can charge a fighter, and then after that attack action is done, I can then push them up to 3 hexes. That's wild. Hey, we can go, try to crush somebody and then get onto our objective placement. I like this better than the charged out move that we're looking at. Brutal Cunning. Okay, so next up, we have the suite from Rimelocked Relics that's going to be competing for these 10 bangers. Bleak Outlook, pass. Brittle Reveal, pass. Cool Heads, pass. This one is not 100% a pass. Friendly fighters holding objectives cannot be pushed. Normally I don't take this card because it's not about being pushed, it's about being dead. We can consider this. I don't know if we're going to have room for it. Creeping Frost was something I was imagining we might want to pick up to help us with the damage surge, but I think more and more we're probably leaning away from it. And if we bring something like this, it makes that 3 Gambit card harder because it's requiring that we had a Rimelocked Relic. So we had Seed Glory. It's now face up. And so if we bring that Gambit, this is one of those cards that can really clunk it up. So I think we continue to steer away from that 4 damage successful surge, and we keep Creeping Frost out of the equation. We could choose to bring this instead of the remove tokens for +1. So that's also an option. I'll add it. I gotta think of this one a bit more, but my gut is that we're not going to be taking it. Fractured Steps. Choose a friendly fighter that has one or more face down Rimelocked upgrades and pick one of those cards. Push that fighter 1 hex for each thought counter on that card. It's a good push. It does have to be extremely well timed. It constantly does not make it into my Rimelocked decks. So like what usually makes it in is Winterborn Might, which I'm not sure we need here. Yeah, I don't think we need this here, but this normally makes it into my deck. So this is taking a look at your face down Rimelocked Relic, and then removing an amount of thought counters from it, and then +1 dice to the first attack action made in the next activation step by that fighter for each thought counter you removed in this way. And so that's at max 2. So it's 1 or 2 is what you're getting from this. Because if it ever hits 3, you must flip it. It's not a May. So with Winterborn Might, again, this generally serves either some more accuracy from me or Steaming Corpses, often both, which is why it finds its way into the deck. I don't think we need it for either reason here, so it might get left behind, which feels weird. But normally it's Winterborn Might, Glacial Advance, and Frozen Solid are the 3 cards from this deck that instantly make it in, with Creeping Frost being the 4th pick. And then usually I'm just happy, and I just grab 6 from the other pairing. So we are going to grab Frozen Solid. The chance to freeze an upgrade on our opponent's side is just immeasurably good. If we have somebody on our side who doesn't have a relic yet, we can always, and we have something like Stolen Warmth in our hand. If they have any upgrade, but no Rimelocked upgrades amongst them, we can always choose one of theirs and try to Rimelock it as well, and get that rolling as a face-up Rimelocked relic for us for Stolen Warmth. So there's play on both sides of the table for Frozen Solid in this build. Glacial Advance, we're picking this up 100%, choose up to 2 friendly fighters and push each chosen fighter 1 hex. After each push, that fighter must be holding an objective. Then give each chosen fighter 1 move token or 1 charge token. This can be something that stretches our leader's ability, where, hey, we're going to take the special action, we're going to push up to 2, and 1 or 2 of our guys aren't going to make it. Well, we can then use this to make it. But I think a lot of the times we'll hold on to this until we get pulled off of an objective and then use it to push right back on. Cool. So I feel good about these 14. I think it's going to be really hard to cut 4 from there. And so no need to make it any harder, especially when practice has told me that a lot of the other relic stuff is not worth taking majority of the time. So what are we going to take for Rimelocked Relics? Let's take a look at that picture. Mission statement of the deck is to include the crown. So the Arctic Crown is in. And then, I typed in Rimelocked and I got all 10 of theirs because it's also the name of the deck. So it's going to come up. So Chill Brilliant Armor. This fighter's defense characteristic is 2 and cannot be modified further. This can, for some reason, be on large fighters, which, thank you. That's awesome. So we're going to have some Orc at some point on 2 block. Feel free to go out with that. That is not a Rimelocked upgrade, though. Frostbite. So this is how we're going to score Steaming Corpses, I think, majority of the time. After an activation step in which this fighter's range 1 attack action dealt damage to the target, pick one of the target's upgrades that is not Rimelocked. Even if that fighter is out of action, turn that card face down. That card is Rimelocked. That card follows the rules for Rimelocked upgrades on the Rimelocked Relics pot card until the end of the game. So these, I mean, this just feels like an auto include. You're going to put this in 90% of your Relic decks. You're going to have a reason not to take it, like Thorns, for example. I don't think Thorns needs it. But Frostbite is... Did I say that you're going to put both of these? Chillblain Armor, you're going to put into 90%. Frostbite frequently doesn't make it into decks. But here, we're running around doing range 1, strong damage attacks, and we need the help getting Steaming Corpses. Also not Rimelocked on its own. We're starting to fill up the upgrades without adding in Rimelocks. Spinner right, thanks for showing up late to the party, but you're right about it being something I'm interested in. I'm glad. Gelled Cyclone's already been talked about a lot. That one's going to make it in. Layfrost Conduit is going to make it in. Ideally, this makes it onto your leader, who's going to, like, his purpose is going to be to hold on to enough wall counters, which I'll have to figure out how to generate. And I might be underestimating how difficult it will be to keep those as an option for him. We pretty much want him to always have one spare to use his action. But if he's hanging out on an objective, we want him to be able to boost the other guys. Really, we want this to boost anybody, but in particular, we've got swords attacks over here on 3. So we can kind of quasi turn them into hammers by adding support from afar, or using it to cut into somebody who's on 2 defense dice and take them down to 1. So these 2 are Rimelocked, so that helps with what we need there. Frostgale, I think we're going to pick up. This is also hilarious imagery. Just imagining one of these just hulked out, like, are they war bosses? I think they're war bosses. I have not ventured far enough into the lore yet, and I really should. I've really enjoyed orcs from, like, the first moment I started interacting with them in Age of Sigmar's Warhammer Champions. Is that what that's called? Champions, the card game. It's a really fun card game. It's my first Age of Sigmar experience, my first Warhammer experience. You know what? If you want to know, next week I'm hoping to do an AMA. I'll answer it there. Some of you might already know the answer. I'm not normally withholding. Okay. Frostgale. Frostgale. Let's hang it on our position and toss some shots out. Raw Power. When this fighter makes a range 1 attack action, +1 damage to that attack action if there were no successes in the target's defense roll. So this could be a way to cheeky get up to 4 damage. Polar Connection, I think we're going to pass on. This is +1 dice and innate to range 1 and range 2 attack actions while this fighter is holding an objective. I think people are going to be pretty uncomfortable with fighting us in that position as much as possible. You're going to see a lot of range 2 fighters walk up to you, or range 3 fighters from that safe enough range to try to, like, start chipping into you and taking you off of platforms instead of, like, coming up to you and risking a range 1 fighter if the attack fully misses. So I think your opportunities for this is going to be very little. And I would only bring it if I was uncomfortable with our number of Rimelocked upgrades. But I think I'm going to be happy with them. So we're kind of trading Polar Connection out for Arctic Crown, because normally Polar Connection finds its way in. So that says, I think we have 5 then. Arctic Crown, Raw Power, Layfrost, Gelled Cyclone, and Frostgale. And then these two are just really good, and we kind of need them. So there's 7 cards already spoken for in our upgrades. I think we'll be taking Vengeful Glare on. So yeah, I think we will. Maybe one. Oh, this is Vessel of the Law is Ard Skull specific. I think I missed that before. It's good to know. Okay, let's take a look at the rest of their upgrade picture, and then we'll move on to the cut here. All right, so starting from the bottom. So the Edbutt that we already took a look at. I can't think of a really good reason to onboard another range 1 attack, so I'm going to leave it out, especially with the little bit of room that we have. Seething Hatred, you can reroll any number of attack dice in the attack rolls for this fighter's attack actions that target a fighter with a wounds characteristic of 4 or more. So this is restricted to Thug. As long as we're fighting somebody 4 or more health, reroll any number of attack dice against them. Wow. I think it might be too situational. I mean, it's wild to say, but we have 3 slots left, at most. And I just don't think it makes the cut, is really what's going to happen. Keen Choppa. This fighter's range 1 attack actions have Cleave. This is Morgok. I don't think we have room for that. Inured to Pain. When this fighter is dealt damage, reduce that damage by 1 to a minimum of 1. I think we always have room for Inured to Pain. Incredible Bellow. Action, pick 1, push all adjacent enemy fighters up to 2 hexes, or push all other friendly fighters up to 1 hex. This is Morgok. Interesting. You could use this to push somebody off of an objective, but you have to use it as an action, so you have to get into that position. And then the orb part here is kind of like a worse version of what we're trying to do with his walk counters. I don't know if we hate the redundancy though, because if we can use walk counters to get into those positions, then just pushing 1 might be enough. I think it might belong in this particular build. We'll see if we can sneak it in and test it out. This might be a misstep, in which case I'll report back once I field report. Brute Swing. The fighter's range 1 or range 2 attack actions have knockback 1. I love knockback, but I think it's a nice to have and not a needs to have here. Brute Charge. Rolls of hammers and swords are successes for this fighter's range 1 attack actions made as part of a charge action. Whoa, that's bananas. Yes, I would like that extreme accuracy buff, please. Combine this with somebody covering you on Layfrost, and all of a sudden the only thing that you're missing on is double support. Yeah. Berserk Whirl. Reaction. After this fighter's activation, scatter 2 from this fighter's hex and push them 1 hex along the chain. If you cannot push this fighter into an empty hex, nothing happens. Ard Skull. Nope, I think we have our options all selected. Thankfully only 12 upgrades, so not too much work on the trim here. But I think it's going to be a tough trim all said. So 2 upgrades, 4 gambits, and 6 objectives need to find their way out. 3 and 3. So as far as generation goes, our main generators are going to be Wa Energy, which is a dice roll. Eager Advance, which is 1 fighter getting 1. And then the rest is whatever we're going to get from attacks. So, and Brawling. Brawling isn't attack dependent, but okay. So that is all to say. And then Inured, or what is it, Vengeful Glare. If somebody attacks us, they give us Wa. I've been against this card before, and I didn't enjoy that was happening. So this is scary enough. We're gonna have to cut something over here. Okay, so Creeping Frost and Berserk Strength are kind of in the same spaces, but if we take Auric Cunning, I don't want to take Creeping Frost. and I think I want to take Auric Cunning. So let's see. Do we go with... I guess what we could do... So we're definitely going to get rid of... We currently have six walk counters. I think we're going to get rid of 4 damage, attack succeeds, pull as much out of dice rolling as possible here. Which means we're either picking up this essentially like card gamble on Auric Cunning, or is there one of these I don't like as much as the other? We've got such great Seed Glory in here that I'm not afraid of Defrosted coming up when I need Seed Glory. I just feel like we've got... So like Defrosted and Glacial Dominion are your domino effects. You need Seed Glory, and then once you do, they're pretty easy from there, I think. But we could put something like Icy Grip in. No, you know what? We're gonna knock Icy Grip out. We're gonna test Auric Cunning, and we'll see how this goes. We'll see how this goes. Hold on. How many reactions am I taking? Right now I'm considering 3, 4, 5. I'm considering 5 reactions. Those could bite me with Auric Cunning. Not terribly, because Auric Cunning's checking the whole action phase. But like there could be a moment where like I don't meet like the conditions to react, and then that stops me, or I force myself into a position to go for the reaction for Auric Cunning. I think I still like that better than having to try to manage Icy Grip. Okay. We'll hold on to this decision for testing purposes. And then I think over here we're going to get wild. We're going to go for Wintry Conquest. Is that the right choice? So how much holding do we need to do in an end phase outside of Wintry? We need to hold 2 once, and that's it. So I guess the holding that we're doing is mostly for Icebound Defenders, and then Wintry if we bring it. But a lot of it's just temporary. A lot of it's like end of an activation. So we don't need to. In that case, oh man. So like there's a version of this build where we greed and we go for Wintry Conquest, which I think is really fun. Or we go for a Good Day's Work. We don't go for both. Obviously this falls apart as soon as one of our fighters dies, whereas this is something that we can keep working at. Okay, let's get rid of Wintry Conquest. Let's try Good Day's Work. And then we could probably get 2 people over the line by the end of a round. We'll have to be careful with our longboard selections. 4 or more Wah feels tough. Propa Rumble, we're down 4. This is 4 or more fighters are wounded or dead. So I think what we do is we get rid of Wah Unleashed. And we get rid of their fighters are inspired. And you know what? This doesn't look too much different if we go the Wintry Conquest path. So like something I can keep in mind is potentially swapping Good Day's Work out for Wintry Conquest, which again is greedy, but it's fun. I love the like come remove me and then just like constantly getting back on and challenging position style gameplay. And then we'd probably get rid of A Line in the Snow and swap that out for like spend 4 walk counters. That's what that version of this build looks like, and I think the rest stays the same. Okay, so we just need to cut 4 gambits and 2 upgrades. Glacial Advance, we're going to keep, right? If nothing else, Glacial Advance can give us a surprise charged out position. Like your setup is going to look different when you're on the long board versus the wide board, and like where the objectives land next to starting hexes. Like, if there's any that you can use as landing pads, you're going to prioritize those. But if there's any that you can start next to, if you have Glacial Advance in hand, then that's going to push you onto tokens, and you're going to start counting up towards things like Now What, and maybe even Icebound Defenders. Actually, with Icebound Defenders in here, what am I even thinking? Glacial Advance is a sure-in for that card being present. So Frozen Solid, helping us with Steaming Corpses. We need it. Creeping Frost, out. Goodbye. It's going to mess with Auric Cunning at some point in time, and it's going to be a frustrating experience. How often do we really need to push to that 4 damage? Especially when we kind of have other ways to get there as well. So Cool Heads, we could consider. A lot of the time, again, my problem with this card is that it's not about being pushed off, it's about surviving. So I'd rather have like +1 defense. But here, I've got the health to soak it up. So maybe I do just care about not getting punted off. Wah Energy, I want to risk the dice rolls here. You have a 50-50 each time you roll for this. So each fighter 50-50. Let's get some Wah going, get them closer to Inspired, get them closer to their cool abilities, or any of these reactions that we're going to have that care about it. But we got to be careful. The generation is not as flowing as maybe I had imagined. And so we got to be careful with how many things that we bring that reduces or relies on them being present in the first place. Power of the Wah. So this is our heal. It's consider it marked. Like, is it doing enough? Probably, but often I like to rely less on heal and more on positioning and stuff like that. So any other tricks, like for example, I'd take Cunning Brutality before I would take Power of the Wah. Be able to charge and then push away 3 hexes seems incredible. Eager Advance here. Choose one friendly fighter and push them 1 hex. Yeah. I mean, we already know that I'm keeping this. Because it's also generating that Wah. Brutal Reprisal. You can't drive me back, and I'm going to attack you back. If I had to choose between this in my hand or Cool Heads in my hand, I would choose this every time. It's interesting. This goes further for you if you get Frost Scale. So, which is fun. Like I want that moment to come up, because if you attack me with a range 2, I can't react with this. I have to be able to make an attack, and I'm range 1 for the most part. For the entire part, I think. Yeah, for the entire part. And so Brutal Reprisal will only work in response to range 1 attacks. So that's something to keep in mind. And I guess does change how I feel a little bit about Cool Heads. But if you have a range 4 loaded onto your fighter, that can be how you react with Brutal Reprisal. Brutal Cunning, play this after a friendly fighter's move. As cool of a trick as this is, I'm asking to get to charged out before this matters. I do have 3 fighters. I'm going to have to find different ways to cheat tokens, like through Glacial Advance and through Gelid Cyclone, to appreciate that stance a lot of the time. And I might already be on like objectives, which means Glacial Advance is not going to get me the... Like I find if you start the round on an objective and nobody comes and moves you off of it, well, then all of a sudden you're not using Glacial Advance, like unless you find a way to get yourself off of the objective and then back on it. So I don't know how much we're going to hang out with one fighter kind of like detracting from our ability to be charged out and really use something like Brutal Cunning. So Brutal Cunning might be a weird cut here. +1 dice, and then place 1 Wah counter on that fighter's card. So get to 2 Wah with an accuracy boost. I feel like we have to take that. Brawling might get cut because all it's doing is putting a Wah counter on a fighter. Yeah, I think Brawling's probably getting cut. Let's cut that. It feels weird to get rid of a generation. but needing to be next to somebody to get it to go is probably a good reason to pull it out. Let's get rid of the move trick as well, which feels weird. And so here's another question. Do I want to risk healing on a dice roll where I'm only looking for focus? I'm only looking for focus. Never mind. Goodbye. Okay. Let's try this out. Maybe I'll miss the healing, but it wouldn't be the first time I left healing out of the show and then, or out of the deck's first draft, and then figured out later that that was a mistake. Looking at you, Valmorn. Okay, so over here, major incredible accuracy boost. Very hard to justify any, like, this is in, because it takes our other two fighters that aren't our leader and makes their attacks like unstoppably good. Inured to pain, reducing the damage that we're taking. That feels great. The fact that these spend wall counters has me a little nervous, but I think we're fine. I'm just nervous about them with Auric Cunning. Like, should I, instead of bringing the reduction because I'm bringing Inured to pain, should I bring the healing, take the chances with it, instead of trying to react with Berserk Fortitude and taking away from the Wa, or maybe we don't have a Wa counter yet, so we can't, but we could heal. Maybe these are things I feel out in the field report. All right, and so I'm refusing to get rid of any of these. So then place one Wa counter. So I think Vessel of the Wa is gone, which we kind of knew going in. So it's Vengeful Glare or Inured to Pain. And it's not Inured to Pain. An Incredible Bellow I just really want to test with. Do I? Actually, I don't need this. We didn't bring Wintry Conquest. If we brought Wintry Conquest, we have to bring Bellow and we have to cut Vengeful Glare. But because we're not bringing Conquest, we can say goodbye to that card. There we are. So, we need a good name. So, I was thinking about, like, just kind of your traditional, like, name amalgamations here, like, are these the Relic Krushas, right? Like, is this a band of, like, anti-relics? They want to get out there and they want to just crush all of the relics, like, get rid of the old magic, get rid of the ancient ways, like, just embrace the Wa. Again, I don't know the lore enough, so I don't know how ridiculous I'm being in concept there. But you could go for the easy Relic Krushas, or Morgok's Relic Krushas. And I don't think you'd be overly wrong to. I always want to put Cunnin. I love just the use of Cunnin when it comes to orcs. I just find it hilarious. But these days, I feel like it leans you more towards the skinnier ones. I can't think of what their classification is, but like the Cunning Crew are that more scrappy. So are the Stab Lads, right? You've got your orcs that are more focused on brains over brawn, as much as orcs can be. But so I don't know. I think Relic Krushas, with where we're at time wise as well, I think that's gonna have to be the soft ball there. Just looking, like Crush and Defend. It's like Crush and Defend. Sometimes it feels like it has to be a name for a warband and not a deck. Like if I was just naming a deck, but often I like associate this with the warband, like the Chillblain Hunt. It's not, oh, this is Skace Wild Hunt, with the Chillblain Hunt deck. I just introduce it in my head as the Chillblain Hunt. So if I were to say like Crush and Defend, that doesn't feel like it's a name of an actual like warband. Okay, we're gonna go with Relic Krushas. Make it nice and simple. You see me drifting down the names of the cards. That's resistance. That's wanting to come up with something a little more. I already came into the episode thinking like Relic Crushes was a candidate, so I was like, maybe I'll think of something more clever as we go through. But we'll call it the Relic Crushes. Okay, awesome. So with that, that's gonna wrap our build for the day. What I do want to highlight real quick, I mentioned or teased this a little bit, is life is really busy on this side, and I still want to make this show work and keep doing it. And so for a minute, I think I'm going to try some more experimental topics to show up to the cast and still be here and hopefully bring value to your day and to your YouTube viewing experience. And still, get to talk Underworld. So I think coming up next will be, I'll probably do a field report for these fellas as early as this next week. Like right now, I'm hoping to potentially do an AMA next week. So I can't imagine doing one, to be frank. So like if you're out there and you're interested in asking me questions and having me answer them on the show, whether they're personal, whether they're, about Underworlds, about what the hex, my Madison locals, how I balance all of this, who I am, what board games I like. I'm a huge board gamer. What do I do outside of Underworlds? If any of that interests you at all, let me know. I'd love to sit and hang out, but only if that's something that that is wanted, like that you want as the way that we interact one of these weeks. So that could be next week. If you're interested in an AMA, please send me questions. Send me them either at my Gmail. So that is, I'll put that in the show notes. Yeah, in the description down below. But it's what the decks cast at gmail.com. Or just find me on Discord. You can DM me on Discord, send me questions. Right now, that's the tentative plan for next week. I'll kick off with a field report for this, and then we'll transition into an AMA. I think that would be enough to fill out an episode. But if I don't get enough questions or interest in doing an AMA, then we'll kind of forgo that other bit, and I'll figure out what to slot in there. So kind of expect next week tentatively a field report on this with an AMA. And then the following week, what I want to do is I want to take a look at all of the decks we've built so far. We kind of have this lull right now, and so I'm trying to figure out how to manage this lull. We haven't had new decks or new warbands come out, and I'm still excited. Like, I'm very excited to go out and try this. But I feel like we're on the edge of a bunch of content hitting us. Like, it wouldn't be unlike GW to drop the last two warbands and two decks of the season of Winter Maw on us as we go into next Maw, whatever that looks like. And so we could have a lot of like fresh things to build with here soon. And in the meantime, how do I manage that? Especially with like the busyness I've got going on behind the scenes. And so I think it would be really cool to do an episode where we take a look at the decks I've built thus far on the show and like kind of tier list them against each other. And like just talk about like, oh, this was my favorite for this reason, like find different fun things to highlight. Like what's the worst name I came up with, the best name I came up with, and just take an episode to reflect on the work that we've done so far during this calm before what I expect to be a storm. So, all right, there's kind of like two ideas for the next couple of episodes. I'd also be super interested in reviewing any deck that you have on your workbench or working on a build, I think I'm going to take a couple weeks break on a fresh build. But if there's something that you're burning to see built on the channel, let me know. I'd still like to get it up for you before, potentially this the end of October is when we would traditionally see a new season. So I got to imagine we have something just right around, and I can just feel the pressure of it. Yeah, we'll do potentially the AMA, potentially an episode. This is something I'm going to do for sure. An episode where we go over the decks built so far and find fun ways to identify them and tier list them and stuff like that. And then I'd love, again, to review something that you have built at home. So I've said that all twice now. So we'll go ahead and sign off. Thank you a ton for joining me, for continuing to be on this What the Decks journey with me. This deck is going to be on the Battle Mallet. All of the decks built on the show, submitted to the show, end up on the Battle Mallet Nemesis library. Go check it out. Those guys are great. And that resource is invaluable to the community. Try this deck out if you get a chance. Love to hear how it goes for you. I'll be trying it this week for sure at my local. And you can best reach me in the comments below on Discord, specifically the Mortal Realms Discord. And if you need a link for that Discord, you can find it along with everything else the Mortal Realms Network has to offer at themortalrealms.com. Again, thank you for watching. Hope to see you next week. I've been Skylar, and this has been What the Decks.